joining in and tuning into this episode. Vince, why don't you tell the good people of the podcast who you are and a little bit about what you've been up to and what you've been interested in the past 10 plus years?
100%. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. So, yeah, my name is Vince Lucente. I am a strength and conditioning coach, and I specialize in applied sports science. So what that really means is I try to do my best to be able to reverse engineer the demands of sport in their context and try to provide better guidance with regards to how we physically and mentally prepare for the demands of that sport. So I've been in the field for 12 years now. And when I first started in my career in the private sector, it was a lot of the game with physical preparation was very much of that kind of old school traditional weightlifting background, right? We wanted athletes to get stronger, get faster. We thought that, hey, if we just continue to raise their strength, everyone's going to get better at the end of the day. And what ended up happening as I started to move on, I started to work in more varsity context with universities. And throughout that time, the second phase of my career, if you will, for this time, I started to lead departments in the varsity setting. So working as the head of the strength conditioning department for Seneca College. And in that experience, I learned through taking what we did in the private sector and trying to improve the strength of the athletes. But you started to feel that working with hundreds of athletes, I had 275 athletes, 12 different sports. And you start to discover that it's really not all about how strong you are. And what we're really trying to do is better understand humans, better understand the demands that they face academically, socially, in their personal lives, and how that affects their performance on the court or on the field of play. And that really shifted my paradigm with regards to trying to better understand how I can support their process, not only through raising their strength ceiling, but rather being more holistic in how we're able to develop the athlete as a human. And so focusing on what stresses are being applied on them, how is that stress affecting them, and what are some mitigation strategies that they currently use? How do they adapt to their practices? Are they actually getting better from their practices, or are there constraints that are holding them back? And so that experience and working in the varsity setting for those few years after in the second phase of my career really helped me to understand how to manage workload, how to better be a communicator to coaching staffs, physical therapy, nutrition, etc., of how we're able to manage stress, look at practice design, and how we're able to consolidate those stressors. So that led me down the tech rabbit hole. And that since then, my paradigm has completely changed with regards to how we approach athlete development. And it brought me to Nova Scotia. So I had, my girlfriend's from here. And at the time in Toronto, I was, ready to continue in the varsity setting. And I ended up, being grateful enough to get a job opportunity at Acadia University. And that led me onto the East Coast from Toronto. And yeah, kind of changed my life with regards to the lifestyle here and everything. But at that level, in this new phase of my career now, before I started ASP, which is my private sector business, and Durable Grappler is a part of that, I was able to take that and use technology to reinforce the abilities that I had, or reinforce the thought processes that I had in the past, and really apply them critically. Acadia really taught me how to work in an integrated support team with other practitioners, like I mentioned before, but to a higher level. So we were with the coaching staffs very often throughout the year. It was a great opportunity to be able to work hand in hand with the coaches of the sport, athletic therapy, and nutrition, to be more mindful of what was impacting our student athletes. And so when you start to look at it through that lens, you really start to see the value of understanding how we can better manage stress and how that can absolutely implicate our performance in a positive manner. So yeah, when I left Acadia, I started Atlantic Sports Performance, and just before COVID, luckily enough. And through that, I've just been able to, again, push this message forward that we're really trying to develop humans here. And the athlete will come out of that. The athleticism will raise. if we first focus on how we're able to raise their floors day to day, how they're able to manage stress, adapt to it, so that we can, when we do apply stress, they're more robust to it. So we're really trying to help to build adaptable, resilient kids, which is what we focus on at ASP. And now with the Durable Grappler, really focus on the jiu-jitsu community and really the combat sports community, because I'm sure that we're going to be able to discuss later in this show the kind of the thought process of combat sports in general, of how athletes prepare. And we're going to break a few barriers today. So yeah,
definitely.
Down this
Definitely. And I
route.
mean, let's get into it, because a lot of people are very interested. And I mean, some of the questions that I got were like, I mean, how can I work strength and conditioning into like my jiu-jitsu training? And I think a lot of people, just like you said, are still kind of old school, just think weights is the way to go. Do more weights, more training equals, you know, more strength, more time on the mat. What are some, like, you know, general things you tell people, like tell these jiu-jitsu guys when they just, you know, think like, well, how can I squeeze like 3 or 4 like weight sessions or strength and conditioning sessions on top of my training now?
Less is more. Yeah, 100%. When jiu-jitsu has been a part of my life very on and off the last 10 years, but I really took the deep dive this past January, and I made a decision to find something that I could be consistent with, that I could put my best effort forward and really focus on me being the most, you know, the best athlete that I can be. I turned 30 this week, and my goal was to get into my 30s doing this as consistent as possible and being as durable as possible and as strong, just transferring all of those traits to the mats, because I love jiu-jitsu. It's changed my life both physically and mentally. And when I started, that was always the question. You know, other members of the jiu-jitsu community would know me as a strength coach, and they'd say, hey, how do I fit these extra lifts in? Or what's super prevalent in the sport is that the injury rates are very high.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our recreational athletes are 9-to-5 workers with a family that come to do jiu-jitsu before or after work. They want to be on the mats every day. They love it, right? You and I both know that. If there's something about jiu-jitsu that drives like this passion toward it, and we never want to get off the mats, but that comes at the expense of our long-term durability. And one of the challenges that I saw was that for a lot of people that want to strength train outside of it, they're doing too much to begin with. And so what I've found is that it really depends. And we have to, even with jiu-jitsu as well, and this is where that paradigm shifts, is that if we're doing more jiu-jitsu, does that guarantee that we are making progress? Because you and I both know the turnover rate in jiu-jitsu is extremely high, right? A lot of people come in hot, they love the sport, they want to do it every day. And 3 months later, chances are you're not going to see them. And it's very unfortunate. And that's because jiu-jitsu is extremely difficult, physically and mentally. There are so many reasons that you can lose your confidence, because you may feel like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for months. I'm training every day and I'm not seeing success. I'm not feeling as good. Why can't I grasp these concepts or use them from what we learn in the class? I can't apply them when I get into my rounds, and every round has to be all in, all out. And you're just exhausted, right? So I always get asked these questions, Vince, I want to add more. I want to do more. I just want, like, can I strength train? I need to get stronger. Awesome. Let's do less. Let's take a week to first reset ourselves and distance ourselves a little bit and see how much different it feels to be recovered. And then from there, let's build a schedule to discover what's going to be ideal for you, because some people may be training, again, it's the lens at which they see their training, right? If I train 6 days a week, does that mean I'm going all out every single day? For most of the jiu-jitsu population, unfortunately, that's the case. So we always want to be able to fit in how many lifts, what's the least amount I can do to continue to get better, right? And that's what we call a minimum effective dose in the performance community, is discovering what's the maximum amount of volume that I can recover from. And that's my minimum effective dose. And so that's where we want to try to find first by telling people or helping people to see that if you first go through your schedule and you're first able to dissect your jiu-jitsu and figure out how can I build a schedule to recover from in jiu-jitsu and structure my training sessions around jiu-jitsu or in jiu-jitsu, then we can figure out how many days a week. For some people, that could be just restoration work because they want to stay on the mat so often, but they don't know how to recover in the first place. They're always on this go, go, go track. So it's a difficult question to answer, but you can train 3 to 4 days a week and train jiu-jitsu daily if you're smart about your process and you're able to manage your stress accordingly, right?
Yeah, no, that's all amazing stuff. I love it. So yeah, a couple interesting things there. Managing stress, that's definitely a big one, and actually first, the less is more, that made me think of my own teaching and like less is more. How can I get the most out of this class, out of this unit that I'm teaching? Like right now, I'm about to do like a unit on half guard. And I'm trying to think, okay, what are the most important moves that I can show you from half guard? Like these are the building blocks, the underhook, the knee shield, right? Like things that you need to know, because as you know, with jiu-jitsu, like you can get down a rabbit hole with any position and any move. There's so many different ways you can go, and that's why it's so fun, right? But it's like, I feel like that's what I'm always trying to think about with my teaching, like less is more. What's like the main core things I need to show my students that make them good at half guard, right? So yeah, that's really awesome. And managing stress too. Like I feel like a lot of people just think like, train more, lift weights, but they don't think about like, getting enough sleep and like proper diet. What would be some other factors that you would tell people like, when you're managing stress, like watch out for this?
Absolutely. You can look at stress as like a bucket, right? And so I use this bucket of what we call adaptive capacity, which means every day that you wake up, you have a bucket that can be either huge to take on a lot because I recovered really well, or it could be dramatically shrunken down like a kitty bucket. What we want to do there is the better that we can recover, the larger the bucket. The larger the bucket, the more stress, the more water that bucket can take on. And what often happens is that when we go too far with our training and we think that we're getting better, there's a concept of fatigue masking fitness, is that we're doing more and we're feeling that just because we're doing more than we are fit, but that's not the case at all. And so what ends up happening is that we continue to spill over our recovery bucket and our adaptive capacity can never really get big. So we're just pushing unnecessary stress onto our system. And so what we have to focus on are what are the lowest hanging fruits when it comes to improving our management of stress. And a lot of that is going to be the basics. Like you had mentioned, what are the 1 or 2 things? Sleep is your best supplement. Before anyone asks me, hey, Vince, should I be taking creatine or this or that? Should I be doing this supplement? Or how about BCAAs? No. Are you sleeping? And sleep is interesting because not everyone can afford to get 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep. And if you had time to sleep and you woke up without an alarm, not many people can sleep for 8, 9, or 10 hours if they don't have to get up the next morning at a certain time. So with sleep, we really want to focus on sleep hygiene and our quality of sleep. And so the day ahead is dictated, the success of that day as we perceive it mentally and physically is set up by what we do the night before. So if we're following through with those standards, with a high standard of sleep hygiene, that includes, generally just the temperature of my bedroom. I should have, knockout blinds. It should be pitch black. It should be relatively of a cool environment. Weighted blankets are a huge asset. Eye masks, I'm a big fan of, shameless plug here. I have no affiliation to the company, but Manta, I have different sleep masks based on how I'm feeling. I take that seriously. If a sliver of light comes in, I have an eye mask on and it's weighted. You really have to manage that sleep environment. Blue light exposure, right? Can you set the alarm on your phone earlier in the day to go to bed? We always have an alarm to wake up, but can we set a bed alarm? Hey, this is your time to go to bed. And the thing is that when we do a lot of jiu-jitsu and we love it so much, we think about how we try to take better care of ourselves because we want to get on the mats the next day, and we don't want to go to jiu-jitsu and not have a good session, right? We have this idea of what success means to us. So we want to take better care of ourselves. So doing these little things like setting a bedtime alarm, making sure that either you're going to go the blue light blocker glasses approach, or setting night shift on your phone, little things like that go a very long way. Waking up in the morning, getting direct sunlight exposure for a few minutes as soon as you get up, just go outside, have your coffee on the deck, extend your caffeine intake 2 hours after you wake up. These are little things that, one of my favorite books of all time is called The Slight Edge. It's this aggregation of marginal gains, this little thing that I do that doesn't take much thought, but it ends up compounding to absolutely transform my energy. And if that does, that transforms the battery or the bucket that I have throughout the day. And so if we're focusing on sleep, that's number one, because I find that not many of us are. If we don't have the quantity of sleep, can we drive the quality of that sleep? If you I like to use wearable tech using Whoop. I want to make sure that as I'm sleeping, that my REM and my slow wave sleep are going to be optimized for the night. So how I have that final hour before bed of not being on my phone as best as possible, trying to keep, my eyes at ease, that's going to improve my REM sleep. Journaling helps a lot with REM sleep. So the more REM sleep that you get throughout the night, I've had evenings where I've slept 2 hours longer, but I've had less REM sleep duration. So that is affecting my creative capacities the following day. My skill retention, which you and I both know is massive in jiu-jitsu. So sleep is number one. We can go into nutrition and nutrition and hydration should absolutely be a priority, right? Especially hydration. I guarantee that none of us are truly hydrating enough unless we have a hydration plan. We think that we are, but the standard hour of jiu-jitsu through what we do pre and post weigh-ins for most of our members at Durable Grappler. I find about a 4 to 7 pound sweat loss, water loss through sweat per hour. So if that's the case, and we're just drinking regular water, that's not necessarily rehydrating us. We need electrolyte support, right? And that could get into a rabbit hole in itself, but just adding a little bit of salt to your water, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt for every liter. Some people add some lemon in there for extra flavor, or some Mio, whatever it takes. We need electrolyte support. And unfortunately, Gatorade doesn't always do the best option because you need a lot of Gatorade to replenish 4 pounds lost in water. So how we hydrate and our sleep should be of, biggest importance. Focus on drinking more water, focus on true replenishment through electrolyte support, and then nutrition. So when we get into that, that's another thing that we just want to make sure that jiu-jitsu is a highly lactic sport. It's a very glycolytic sport. So it is very much reliant on carbohydrates to support our efforts, right? You can get away with having a lower carb diet in jiu-jitsu, but that doesn't mean that it's optimal for your recovery rate in jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu is a lactic sport and does require glycogen to be utilized for the energy system demands of the sport. So
definitely. I just before we go too much into the nutrition, I just want to talk a little bit about the sleep and the compounding thing that you said. It brought me back again to teaching and just thinking about just making those little changes. They make a big difference over time. I used to just for example, before I would drive in town to teach my class, I used to just watch YouTube for 10 or 15 minutes, and then I was I could just watch an Gordon Ryan instructional for 10, 15 minutes before I leave. And, now I've watched an instructional of his over the course of a week or 2 weeks. I'm just if I just keep doing that, I've watched 3 or 4 instructionals over the course of a couple months. And, that knowledge just keeps compounding. And it's I'm getting so much better. It's I've really, really noticed that throughout my training career. And sleep too. I've always been a good sleeper. Previous to having my son, it's been a little bit affected by him. But yeah, it's funny because even some of the guys I would live with, I guess I just noticed, like, I've heard, like, yeah, you got to get good sleep. I was always into experimenting with like weights and diet and all that stuff as I was training. So I just, yeah, started going to bed earlier. And it was funny because even a couple of my roommates at the time, like Joel and Pat, I remember them saying like, I think Presley might be like sick or like terminally ill. Like he's going to bed at like 8 o'clock.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was just like, I just noticed, it was like, well, when I get up, I feel like awesome and I have a good training session. If I just sleep for 4 hours, like I'm just not getting the best effort out of myself that I know I could if I had a good night's sleep. And then my wife is a nurse, and I've always just been like, a 9 to 5 guy, sleep at night. So she was like shift work, and that was the first time I ever really, experienced someone that was like, no, she sleeps like in the middle of the day. She's got to have those blackout blinds. It's like she just often has crappy sleep because like it's just not optimal for your body to sleep in the middle of the day. So yeah, I think that's definitely an underrated thing that people just like. It's just easy to be like, well, I'll just like stay up for another 20 minutes, and that just turns into a half hour and stuff. But yeah, get your sleep and set a bed timer. I think that's all awesome stuff.
Yeah, it's all down to habits. I think at the end of the day, we can very much overwhelm ourselves with, there are so many ways that I can improve my performance and recover faster and better. Focus on one thing. Let it be for a month. Even with regards to skill development, because this is what I find as well, is that like through structuring training and helping our clients to build their jiu-jitsu schedules, we're able to then dissect, hey, from a skill development perspective, how do you perceive success in jiu-jitsu? Right? I think that that's really important, because if I perceive my success to be on one thing this month, my development is based on, perhaps one tactic up top, my top game, one in the bottom game. Okay, I'm going to work on my De La Hiva in the bottom, and that's going to encapsulate, my off balancing. Can I be consistent with that? And maybe one or two chains into that for this month. On my top game, I'm going to work on my Toriandos. I'm going to work on my variants of that Toriando and not just be, a one size fits all type of guy. I'm going to work on, okay, how am I getting grips? Where am I setting my hands? And we're going to work on that. And hey, you may do so much more that month, but if I focus on the success of my session and my competitive rounds in that session, based on my technical and tactical prowess and development in those two things, one on my top game, one on my bottom, that's going to set me apart for, again, like you mentioned with those instructionals. If I'm then watching instructionals to reinforce those skills, I can accelerate that development through the sacrifice of 1 month, not even a sacrifice because it's the overall long-term development, but that slight edge work of specific training in one or two things, that helps you then move forward in how you analyze your performance now. And now you're not getting down on yourself. Now you're able to be more mindful of your performance. You're able to celebrate the small wins. We hear about that all the time. And then from there, it's again, like we're just keeping everything simple. Sleep. One or two things that you're going to do this month for your sleep. Nutrition. One or two things. I'm going to add a cup of vegetables every meal. Perfect. That's awesome. You can worry about macros and you can worry about specific protein, all that next month. One step at a time. We want to focus on building small habits and celebrating the heck out of those wins often. Everything is a gain. When you have that extra cup of vegetables, when you sit in the car for 5 minutes after jiu-jitsu and you either journal in your phone or write down, I learned this today, or my Toriando pass got better in this way. This is how many rounds I did, and this is how it felt. That 5 minutes over the course of, 3-4 days a week, right? That's like almost 20 opportunities a month that you've reflected 5 minutes, right? It's all small things done consistently over time that absolutely transform our games. And that's what, again, we try to get super overwhelmed. It happens in jiu-jitsu because there's so much to learn and we're never done learning. No matter what level you are, there's always something new and skills adapt. But if we can just shut it down to thinking of one or two things in each part of my lifestyle, I'm going to go a lot longer of a way than trying to be everything has to be optimized. It's an infinite game.
Yeah.
It's an infinite game.
An infinite game, yeah. And yeah, it's true. You got to focus on one thing, like take your time, like sharpen that up and then go to another area. That's what you got to do. Like one thing I think about that's cool with jiu-jitsu is that the feedback is immediate. If your double leg worked or not right away. Like it either worked or it didn't. That's how it is with a lot of techniques. And I don't know, life isn't like that a lot of times in other areas. Like sometimes with like business, like you don't necessarily know right away if something is a success or a failure. But with jiu-jitsu, like, and like that hurts sometimes because you get like good, honest feedback immediately. And it's like, sometimes it's tough to swallow. So I feel like it's something that's cool about jiu-jitsu, but I think it's can be tough for people too. And yeah, so I mean, going into like the diet of it too, you kind of briefly mentioned, like people, I feel like that's something I hear a lot of people like talking about, like low carb diets. And something I get asked all the time is, like, Presley, how much weight should I cut? I'm 200 pounds for this tournament and I want to be 185. Like I'm always asking, like, well, have you tried to cut weight before? Is this something you've done? A lot of people are very inexperienced with this stuff. What would you say to that? Do you have any advice for people in that regard, or talk about that?
Hire out.
Good advice.
That is number one. Oh my gosh. I hired out myself. I did 22 weeks of a sustainable weight cut, right? I wanted to compete in August, and I knew at the start of the year, I had August in Toronto lined up. This is when I want to compete. I weigh 235 pounds now. I want to get to competing at the 195 category. And you think well ahead of time. Do not think, I need to cut weight in 6 weeks. We see it all the time in combat sports. It's cool to see people drop 20, 30 pounds even in a month, using aggressive weight cutting strategies. But I've been very grateful in my career to have mentors that are in the combat game, working with UFC fighters and professionals. And the way that they go through these drastic weight cuts through, literature, or not evidence-based practice, it takes a lot. And it's a lot more detailed than we can imagine than just water cutting and salt cutting. There's so much. When you see those fast cuts, it's not everyone thinks they can do it. It's not the case. They have a full performance team behind them. Yeah. And it is very detailed. So when we are thinking of cutting weight, you always, again, people go through the ringer with regards to their nutrition and they try all sorts of things. And again, this is also the reason why jiu-jitsu can get so overwhelming, because we try all the things. So with nutrition, again, finding a really good professional that can help and that understands the combat game is the best investment that you can make. Because when I set out my nutritional goals and I hired out and I had the assistance, the guidance, the mentorship, as extensive as my education on nutrition is, I'm a precision nutrition certified coach. Still, it was having someone to guide me through that process regardless, because I didn't want to think about it. And I wanted to make sure that if I'm just following through with this plan, mindlessly, just following through, I'm reading the scale continues to, trend downwards, not always go down. That's another thing that throws us off course, is that we just want to make sure that when it comes to cutting, and I'm sure that you know this as well, you've probably experienced this, you cut too much weight or you cut weight too fast, your mental game deteriorates. Physically, you feel slow, you feel lethargic. A lot of us do not compete, and it's not our full time. We have a job, we have a family, and that starts to affect that. And so when we go through nutrition and we try to do it on our own, it's just too much stress. It's too much to add on the plate. So always finding someone or finding reputable resources to help you through that nutrition, because again, it happens far too often where we cut this weight and we're like, oh my gosh, I competed, but I was exhausted. I couldn't think straight. That month was horrible. I felt the worst. I couldn't perform. It's because a lot of times, we go through these low carb diets because we think, oh yeah, I'm just going to cut carbs. Well, yes, when you do cut carbs, a lot of the weight that you lose initially in that first week to 10 days is water weight. For every gram of carbohydrates, it's about 4 grams of water being carried with it. So you're losing water. And you'll know this if you take out dry rice and then you add water to the rice and cook it, the volume is significantly greater, right? You can think of the same with regards to glycogen in your muscles and your liver. When we lose that, we lose water. When we lose water, we also lose electrolytes. So now the number one energy system that we need to perform in jiu-jitsu is the glycolytic system. To recover that requires carbohydrates. And if we're not keto adapted, it's still not superior to a higher carb diet. We're going to set ourselves back, but we're thinking, oh, we're losing weight. It's not the case, right? So again, it can become a really dangerous game too, physiologically as well, for a lot of people that cut weight too soon or cut too much too fast. That can have some physiological implications as well that are not necessarily worth the risk for just a tournament, right? So
yeah, totally.
You really have to be careful.
I always tell people, compete the weight that you are. For one, yes, you're going to have a way better experience. So many people get lost in this. I got to cut this weight and I got to be doing running and all this stuff off of the mat. And it's like, oh my God, like just, you got to focus on jiu-jitsu. Like that's what's going to win you the tournament, your technique, right? Especially at the, the earlier levels. So yeah, it's something that I question that I get all the time, like, well, how much weight should I cut? It's like, you shouldn't be cutting any weight. If you need to like lose weight or if your months, not like you said, 6 weeks is not enough, like 3 months, maybe you can lose a couple pounds and, see where you should be at. But if you're training actively anyways, if you're on the mat 2, 3, 4 times a week, you probably don't have 20, 30 pounds to lose. I mean, everyone starts at different places. Like, maybe I shouldn't say that, but I would say when it comes to weight cutting, just go with what you are, and you'll have a way better experience at the tournament. You'll still enjoy jiu-jitsu, and I think that's the route you should go.
Yeah, you just need to have it when all is said and done, you want to have a positive experience in your first tournament. And what you definitely don't want is to say, I did horribly because I had no energy. I was so lethargic. I weighed in and then I didn't have the right refueling strategy. There's just so much that can go wrong if you try to do it yourself and you don't know where to go and you follow bro science or what's online, this MMA fighter's weight cut strategy, this hydrate. Don't think about it. The whole point of competing for so many recreational jiu-jitsu athletes are 9-to-5ers. For many of them, especially at the early levels, you're competing for the experience. Go out and find a weight that's healthy for you, that you feel really good at right now, maybe. Like you mentioned, that's a great idea. The whole point is to elevate your confidence. Win or lose, you're absolutely going to learn from the experience, and you've put yourself out there. That's more important at the onset, because again, celebrating small wins than being like, I was performing suboptimally, and that becomes an excuse now, and it derails you from wanting to compete again, at least for a long time, because of how negative that experience was. Because technically and tactically, you couldn't be sharp because you had no energy, and you were also working throughout the day, and you couldn't sleep because, again, like physiologically, you're adapting and you're just pushing all this stress. That water, as we mentioned before, is pouring well over, and we're not, with jiu-jitsu as well, it's really easy to be undernourished. Yeah. A lot of us go to work all day. We may have a small breakfast. They have a muffin and a coffee, I hear often, a little lunch. We'll have supper and then we'll go to jiu-jitsu. It's like, okay, well, you had 1,000 calories today. You worked all day. Mental fatigue is huge. Your brain needs 120 grams of glycogen per day for mentally driven tasks. Injury rates in the NCAA for student athletes are the highest during exam period. Mentally stressful days at work, if you work a labor job and you're just having your standard sandwich, then going to jiu-jitsu at night, again, when you're undernourished, it's not just implicating your physical game, it's derailing your mental game. You cannot think as fast. You cannot think as clearly. Jiu-jitsu is about, again, it's not about what you do this next step. It's about what that step after the following step is going to be. And the one after that, thinking 2, 3 steps ahead. And if my brain does not have the energy to support that because I'm trying to cut weight first and go for these runs and do all non-specific work outside of jiu-jitsu, and I also work a labor job or a mentally demanding job in the workforce, and I have family demands of driving left, right, and center, cutting weight is like don't even give it a shot, in my opinion.
It makes me think of when I was competing a lot, like blue belt and purple belt. So when I was the start of my competition career, I would often do featherweight, which is under 154 with the gi on. But when I started in jiu-jitsu, I was 17 years old. You know, my body was changing. I, a couple years in, got into lifting weights because just as we were saying, well, if I get stronger, I'm going to do better. So, it became a little bit harder for me to make the weight. And for me, the trigger to go to the next weight class, which was lightweight under 167 with the gi, was I was at like Worlds or like a big tournament. And I remember I was still doing well. I had won a match or two, but like, I felt like I didn't want to be there. And I was like, this is because of the weight cut. I was like, I love jiu-jitsu, I'm in this awesome tournament. I'm doing well, but it's just like, I can tell my body's just like, I just feel like I just don't want to be here. I'd rather be at home eating on the couch. Right. So it's like, okay, I think I need the extra energy. And I notice with myself now where it's like, I feel like I could maybe be in like a little bit, look in a little bit better shape if I was like stricter with my diet and reduce my calories. But for what? To look a little bit better and like pictures to look a little bit more cut up. Like I need the energy. I teach too many classes and I roll too many times during the week that I've just learned this through training so much that it's like, just like you said, like I need the extra calories because, you need it, right? It's like Craig Jones said it recently in an interview that I know a lot of people watch, that going up in his weight class, he felt like eating more gave him that extra energy that he needed later on in the round. So yeah, maybe eat more, not less when you're getting ready for the tournament.
Absolutely. And what surprises a lot of people is that when you rigorously track your nutrition and your body composition throughout your performance, when you eat to perform and you are on the level where you are tracking your macro intake, you're being mindful of your micro intake, your vitamins and minerals, you will be surprised at how much you need to eat to support your physical and mental demands, especially as like a regular human being working and trying to do jiu-jitsu. Your average hour in jiu-jitsu, if you're getting after it, you're going to expend about 1,000 calories in that. And then again, you're stoking that flame for the next 24 hours after that. Then if you end up training that evening, then if you end up strength training, and there's just so many demands, you're always better off. And I tell this even to clients that are looking for, fat loss goals. It's like, you want to lose fat with as many calories as possible. You do not want to get to the point where you are drastically restricting yourself. And yes, you're losing weight, but a lot of the times it comes at the expense of muscle as well. That's a thing when our diets are too drastic. The mental game goes, it's not worth it. Find a weight class that works for you. And then throughout the year, eat and stay within 2.5 to 5 kilos, maybe maximum out of it. And just be like, I'm just going to eat. I'm not going to track. I'm going to eat based on how I feel. And I'm going to eat to feel better. I'm going to eat to perform. And you're going to find more often than not, you can eat more and you'll find like, wow, I'm not putting on weight. Of course not, because you always needed that food in the first place.
Yeah.
And you never gave it to yourself because you thought, again, your scale weight can change up to 8 pounds a day, right? So, you had too much salt the night before, or you had a lot of water and you weighed yourself too late in the day. Like, don't go that route right now. Focus on your health and eyeballing it with how you feel day to day. What's that capacity today? You don't need wearable technology, right? For most people, it's just, you just start to understand yourself. And if you reflect, you're going to know, I ate a lot today. I felt really good. I'm going to repeat that again the next day. And I'm going to find out what works for me. And it's different for everyone. But yeah, going through an unsolicited process of weight cutting and just, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
it's not worth it. Yeah, no, I think that was a great chat on weight cutting. So what else did I want to ask you? Oh yeah, so I know anyone that would follow you knows you're really into like the heart rate variability, and I think people would be interested in how that is related to jiu-jitsu. And I also want to ask you about your first tournament experience too, because I know you briefly mentioned that, but we'll just sidebar that for now and come back to that later. But speak a little bit about like heart rate variability and how it relates to jiu-jitsu. I think people would be interested.
100%. It starts with valid and reliable technology. So that's number one. So you have to make sure that you have a good piece of tech, and you have to make sure that that tech is worn appropriately. Oftentimes you can have the best heart rate monitor and not have your chest strap on tight enough for a puller, for example. I use Whoop. And again, any movement is changing heart rate response. So when we wear tech to look at our heart rate and our heart rate variability, and we use it to inform our decision making, we just really have to make sure that we err on the side of caution with it, and we focus on getting quality tech first. With a lot of wearable technology, there can be variances. There's up to a 20% standard of error with your standard, Apple Watch or a Garmin. If you wear watches and it's too tight on my skin, I can't wear it. Like, yeah, that's not going to be the most valid. The more that the infrared sensor may have to move, the more variability, the less accurate, etc. And also, again, there's a lot. So for the average user, find good tech. Whoop, again, not affiliated with the business whatsoever. I've been a user for 3 years, and it has a 99.7% accuracy with heart rate and HRV. So you always go on that side and go for quality if you're going to use it to inform your decisions. When we move forward with it, what you want to do when you're using heart rate variability is an assessment of your nervous system on any given day. So a high heart rate variability is indicative of being in more of a parasympathetic rest and digest state. That means I'm going to be able to think clearer, like I mentioned, digest better. I'm more restful. I can think faster. I'm more recovered. A low HRV is indicative of a more sympathetically driven state, fight, flight, or freeze. So everyone you could look at age-related norms, but really the most important thing is N=1, looking at your own data over time. My HRV is wild compared to others. My 50% score on the Whoop would be like 190% score on someone else's. But the whole point is to look at your data and assess. Some days, and again, using tech can really derail people. So I always have these discussions with people to kind of hey, chill. If you get a red recovery or you get a low HRV, it just means, you have to look at the day or the 3 days before it can actually impact your HRV and your nervous system readiness for the day. That's your bucket. Higher HRV, bigger bucket. And notice that, hey, some red days, you may actually perform phenomenally well. I had a great day on the mats yesterday. I did back-to-back sessions in the morning. Usually I'm driving at 4:30 to get down to train. So I need to make sure that my morning is dialed in. So I get on the mats and everything is prepared the night before. I woke up with a 30% recovery score. That's a red zone. Does that mean that I completely flipped the script because my nervous system is not ready at this point in time? Not necessarily. So when we have low readiness, what that is just telling us is to just be more mindful of your actions throughout the day. Be more mindful of what you've done in the day or days prior. And this is why I love subjective reflection and why it's such a big part of our programs at the Durable Grappler. We have people doing daily wellness scores every morning. We have our members doing subjective rating of perceived exertion after jiu-jitsu. How hard was today? How did you feel technically and tactically? Did you feel fast? Did you feel smooth? Was it harder than you thought or easier? How many rounds did you perform? What was the volume and intensity? I love tracking that because the subjective, you doing your own wellness scoring throughout the day, if you gave yourself 5 questions And to scale of 1 to 5, how's my mood, my stress, my energy, my soreness this morning? That's going to be very, very consistent with HRV scores as well. So you're going to wake up, you're not going to feel ideal. That doesn't mean skip the day and just do nothing and chill. Only when it's a theme, that's when you start to be more aware and say, hey, the last 3 months, my HRV has been in the red zone. I've been lower. I'm trending downwards. I need to look at my lifestyle. That's when I need to make a change. Something acute, it's just, hey, your nervous system isn't optimal for today. It's not in the best readiness. Go to the mats anyways. Go to jiu-jitsu, perform. And if you're wearing the monitor, wear it when you're performing and just see. Was today maybe a low day, right? I like to talk about high and low training. A high day is high volume, high intensity, or it could be high intensity, low volume, whatever. It's just like, I'm working hard. I'm competitive. A low day might be specific training, drilling, flow rolling. If we actually know flow rolling, sometimes we say we're going to, it doesn't happen. It's like an intentional day. So go in and be like, yeah, today's my green light day. Today's the day I'm going to just go green. I'm going to like focus on specific training, sweep, pass, submit. Whoever gets a point first, I'm going to work on my De La Hiva. Hey, if you pass my guard, let's just reset. Let's figure out why did you pass my guard, use reflective practice. And then maybe it shows up better. Maybe you get in there and you're like, wow, I feel unreal. I had some honey toast. I'm feeling awesome. Like, just go in, dig in, right? So you want it. HRV is great. Looking at that and seeing, like, I had a green day today. I wore my heart rate monitor. And although I had a green day, my heart rate was still elevated, higher than my normal green days. And that's when you start to know, okay, today, maybe I should really, like, when I get home, I'm going to practice mindfulness. Maybe I do 5 minutes of meditation. Maybe I take half an hour, 10 minutes away from my phone when I'd usually be doom scrolling. Figure out just some, like, go for a walk. That's just, you just want to be more intentional with your actions throughout the day.
I think the reflection part is so important. I think that's a really cool thing that you do with your durable grappler program. And I know I've heard a couple people comment on it that they really enjoy that. And just in general with your jiu-jitsu, I feel like that's so important. Just reflect. Like, yeah, jiu-jitsu, it's really, really fun and it's awesome to roll. But like, if you really, really care about getting better at jiu-jitsu, and I know you do, and anyone that's watching this would care about getting better at jiu-jitsu, like, really reflect. Like, on your drive home, like, turn the radio off and just think, like, what went wrong? Like, what do I need to do to fix it? Like, oh, I can't deal with this guy when he's in my half guard. He's always crushing me. I am always like giving up the Nika pass. Like, you have to like go, like, take something away from it, reflect on it, and then work on that. And then you really can like get better really, really quickly, right? We were talking about that compounding effect. Like, there's so much amazing, incredible information with jiu-jitsu available now online. You can watch Gordon Ryan and John Danaher and all these guys. And I've heard John Danaher talk about it too, like, really reflect on your roles, what went right. And like, obviously you want to build on that, but more specifically, like, what went wrong. And obviously, like, if you got guillotined 3 times, like, maybe you need to work on your guillotine defense and, like, be mindful where your head's at. But I feel like, is that something you've noticed with jiu-jitsu guys? They kind of miss that reflection period, or maybe could like improve on that.
They put way too much pressure on themselves.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah,
that's it. A lot of the times, especially in the consultation process, when I do ask, what's your reflective process, or do you reflect in the first place? Like, how is your ride home? I love this question. How is your ride home after a bad jiu-jitsu day? A day you got smashed. Or if you haven't had that, think of a day where nothing clicks. What is your body language, focus, and self-talk like on that day after? And what was it like before that? Because then we can start to tie in, why did nothing connect today?
Right.
And I like to look BSF and after. And a lot of us put way too much pressure on ourselves. When we don't, it's like, again, it just comes down to your perception of success. What are your success indicators? And I think that it's really positive for us to assess, I feel successful in jiu-jitsu when 1, 2, and 3. List out the things that are like, today is a good day in jiu-jitsu when, and when you finish that session, just stack everything up against that, right? That, like, today's a great day if I, was calm in my rounds. right? If I wasn't like losing my mind, heart rate 180, like that's another reason why I use heart rate monitors, because you should perform like in competitive scenarios. This is within the literature as well. In jiu-jitsu competition at the elite level, the heart rate response to a competitive round for black belts in a 10-minute round was between 164 and about 168 beats per minute. Now, there's age-predicted max heart rates and percentages, etc. But really what that just means is that you don't want to go nuts. That heart rate is not like, gritty, tense. So think of like your success as like, I went in calmer today. My heart rate was lower. I'm better when I'm able to think clearly and think fast. So yeah, we just put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And I think that if we spend 5 minutes to think about the gains, the fact that you got to do jiu-jitsu today, even if you got smashed, what did you learn? If you, like you mentioned, if guillotines, I got caught in 3 guillotines, like if that happened, cool. What can you do better? What are some questions you can ask your coach the next time? Maybe you need a private lesson to go over it for an hour.
Yeah.
Like, look at all the gains that come from the adversity that you experience through those quote unquote bad sessions. They're never bad. That's how you learn, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Everyone puts too much pressure on themselves with jiu-jitsu. I think most people look at success in jiu-jitsu and like, did I tap that person out? Like, how many people did I submit today? And it's like, that's so stressful. Like, even for me, obviously as a black belt, if I'm rolling with someone, people expect me to tap them out a bunch of times, right? But like, it's honestly not that much. Like, people think like, me, if I like submit a white belt a bunch of times, like that's fun for me or something. It's honestly not. Like, maybe it is for some black belts, but I don't really enjoy training like that. Like, I'd much rather like try to train to improve and actually get better at jiu-jitsu. I want that for all my training sessions. So, a lot of people probably see me like videos, like letting people get me pretty deep in arm bars or like letting people get on my back. And it's like I train that way because I think it's the best way to train jiu-jitsu. And I think that's how you get better. You put yourself in some bad situations, you take some risks, if you just stay within your comfort zone and like the few couple moves that you're comfortable with, like you're just not going to get better that way. So yeah, I think you need to branch out and try to do stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel that the attrition rates in jiu-jitsu would not be the way that they were if we did not put as much pressure on ourselves. So I think if we just gave ourselves a chance, and we've all been guilty of it, especially early on in the process, that, like you mentioned, did I win every single round today? Who cares?
Who cares, right? And you don't know, like maybe you're trying super hard. Maybe me and Vince are rolling. And maybe I'm trying super hard, but he's not. Maybe he's just, having like, I'm going easy today. I don't really care how this guy's coming at me. Right. So, and then, you just don't know what's going on in the other person's head. So like, your training is your training for that day. Like, I know some people are like, I submitted that guy or I submitted this guy. It's like, well, I mean, you don't know, like maybe he didn't sleep, maybe he slept for 2 hours that night or what. It's just like, you can't go off of how, like, not that it's not good to get submissions, but it's like that shouldn't be like the factor of like whether your training session was good or not. So yeah, I think that's great how you're kind of laying it out to people, like, set some things that show whether your training session was a success or not. I was calm in like a really bad situation. I didn't freak out. A lot of people have issues with like anxiety and panic attacks and all that type of stuff. So yeah, just being more mindful of your training, I think, is just going to make you just that much better of a grappler.
Yeah, and communication is key. You hit the nail on the head there with, if I don't know where my partner wants to go in this round beforehand, that's a disservice to both of us.
Yeah.
If, you always hear about it all the time, oh, like I'm just taking it easy, my knee or whatever, like that's cool and all. But I like before rounds to be clear. Hey, today I'm doing like this round, I'm going to do specific training. And hey, like, I'm working on today I worked on open guard with no grips on my back. I'm trying to improve that. So if you pass that and my pummeling is not ideal, whatever I'm trying to do, my frames are not well-intentioned, hey, you pass my guard, we're just going to reset right away. And that's the thing. It's like, I'm going to take that seriously when you try to pass. But after that, maintain control, and then we're just going to reset. And if you're going easy and if you're like, man, I don't feel good today, I'm all this, that's okay. You have to have communication with your training partner for that round, because if that person's going in being like, I want to compete hard today, maybe I'm not the right person to go with. But
yeah,
maybe you're going to get a lot of reps of guard passing against me, who's working a lot of reps on guard retention. So you're going to get 5 minutes of very consistent practice on very localized subject matter, right? So,
and you'll remember that training more than you would just a roll. Like me and you have rolled like a number of times, right? Like, I mean, I couldn't tell you exactly what happened in every single roll, but I also know we've done a number of like collar sleeve battles and De La Riva battles, right? So it's like there's something about doing that positional sparring that it just makes you remember it a lot more, and just being so specific with it. So yeah, I think that's so good. And yeah, like man, you're someone I feel like I could talk to with training and stuff for hours. When me and Vince get together and train, like we're the type that our wives and girlfriends are calling us or calling us always as we just keep going and going. But yeah, man, I like finishing up with these kind of random question and answer, and we'll go through these, and then I'll let you talk a little bit about your durable grappler program, and we'll finish up. But first one I've been asking people this season is when you're growing up, did you have a favorite athlete that you admired or looked up to?
Ben Wallace, center for the Detroit Pistons.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, nuts. So good.
He's the man. For people that maybe wouldn't know, like I always loved the NBA, but yeah, Detroit Pistons, like really well known for like just being like such a like well-oiled like team. And Ben Wallace was like not like a huge like scorer. He was more like a rebounder and like toughness, like gritty, like team guy. Yeah, he's just the man. He's like someone you definitely want on your team and not want to play against.
Yeah, undrafted, multiple-time defensive player of the year. The guy would give you 4 points a game, but 3 blocks, 10 plus boards. And then you look at, I played basketball growing up. That was my main sport. I played the defensive game, and I had such an influence of like, no, everybody wants to score in basketball, just like jiu-jitsu. Everybody wants to win every round. But hey, if you have a really good defensive mindset, and you can be that gritty player, be that energy guy like Ben Wallace was, it's like that. There's a lot of internal fulfillment with that.
Yeah. And they always say defense wins championships. So,
oh yeah.
What's your favorite TV show, if you have one?
Oh, that's a tough one. I just finished watching Rings of Power. That was pretty solid. But yeah, my favorite TV show. This is a like one that not many people I think have watched, but it absolutely hooked me in. It's called The Patient, and it just came out. It's with Steve Carell. It is awesome. I don't know if they're going to have a second season. I think the last episode was this week. That immediately enters the top for comedies. How I Met Your Mother is always a classic. I love The Office. I can watch that a million times.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Me and my wife are constantly on a cycle of watching The Office.
You can't stop. You can watch it and you feel like it's the first time every time.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. I'm interested in your answer to this question. Who have you rolled with the most in your jiu-jitsu career up until this point?
I'd say Sam Croft. Sam, for sure. We both nice. Those short boys. We drive to Halifax most sessions. We drove today, actually. That was great. And like Sam and I both met here and in Bridgewater and trained here together. And it was a good thing, post-COVID brought us along, and we train all the time. We try to drill as often as we can when we can't get to the city. And he's a great training partner. It's always good to have people to push you. And when you have a consistent training partner, it challenges both of you to be more diverse, to not be predictable. It's awesome.
100%. Yeah. Sam is the man. And
he literally is.
Love rolling with that guy. Yeah. He's awesome. Who's your all-time favorite fighter?
Ooh, I got to go with GSP. Again, Canadian. Looking at also his history, like the guy would take a train trip to New York City on the weekends from Montreal, and just the investment that he put in, the well-roundedness of his game, the dominance that he showed in his career. I think 12 title defenses, right? Like it's absolutely nuts, right? And he was so humble in his career. Like just, I love him as a competitor, as a human, just a good person too.
Yeah, GSP is incredible. Yeah, it's definitely on my bucket list. I would love to train with GSP and roll with him. He's so into every martial art that it's like, he's incredible at jiu-jitsu. He's an amazing wrestler. Like, yeah, I'm a huge GSP fan too. What was the last technique that you learned in class?
Today was a treat. So we learned Toriando passing from John Thomas today. That was awesome. And it's just, learning from John is different. Like I have all of his instructionals. I love the way that he breaks down jiu-jitsu into the concepts. His way of teaching is just absolutely amazing. So we learned Toriando and just even, different ways to execute it, 3 different strategies based on what what's being presented to you. And it's amazing how simple, but effective, just these subtle things like, hey, place your hand on the inside versus the outside. This is what can happen. Yeah. And, and it's just like, this is your counter to it. And then here's 3 different ways that you can use the Toriando that each of them are independent of each other. So it's like, that was an absolute treat today.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, he's an amazing instructor. What do you usually eat for breakfast?
Eggs, sourdough, pretty standard guy. I think when I always have a consistent eating schedule is the best. I eat the same thing every day. It's pretty much, eggs and sourdough bread, some sauerkraut on that as well. I love myself some fermented food. And that's all she wrote. Keep it simple.
Nice. Love it. I've just added this one, and you're the first one that I've asked this question, but I think it's a good one. What's a jiu-jitsu move that you don't like?
Like being like against me, what I don't like, or what I don't like executing, like something that everyone does to me that I absolutely hate.
Let's go with that. Yes. Yeah.
All right. I hate being in someone's X guard.
In someone's X guard.
I'm a long guy. I hate being stretched out if I'm not fast enough. And if I don't get it right away, it's like, oh my gosh, you're giving me the splits. That and deep half. I don't like being in anyone's deep half. Feel like I'm doing the splits, and that's it.
Okay, yeah, no, I feel that too. Like someone that has a good deep half guard, and I'm thinking of like obviously training with Jake. I trained with him a lot when I was a lower belt. It's like it's almost like you're just like in quicksand. Like you know what I mean? You're just stuck in this position. There's no getting out. Every move you make is the wrong move, and you're just slowly getting deeper and deeper into the worst position. And then he's on your back. It's just like, my God, So it's like, I feel like anyone that's got a good, like real good position can kind of have that feeling of it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And awesome. That was a wicked answer. Last one for this one. If you're setting the round timer and if you're setting the round timer and me and you are rolling, how long is the round going to be?
That's a good one. I don't know. It depends. I whenever you set the rounds, even if we do 5 or 7 minutes, I think that's all we've done in the past. I'm just grateful for the experience anyway. So time it up, no time limit, whatever. Go to exhaustion. I just love rolling for you because every time I roll with you, I learn so much, and you always have such great feedback, Josh, after every round, which is absolutely amazing. And again, I love the way that you roll with me and how like the dynamic is. It's like, again, you mentioned you could sub a white belt a million times and all that, and we can learn from that in one way, but the way that we go through these battles, if you will, it's like it teaches me a lot of, again, it's just success leaves clues. And so set it to whatever. I'm in.
No, awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I love training with you too. And people that wouldn't know, like we've trained together quite a bit, and you've definitely improved a lot. And it's been amazing getting to train with you. So that's all I got for the random questions. Just wrapping up, Vince. Why don't you tell people a little bit more about your program that you got going, the Durable Grappler? How can people find out a little bit more about that if they're interested in being a part of it? Speak about it.
Yeah, Durable Grappler. It's for everyone who loves jiu-jitsu, wants to be competitive for as long as possible. And competitive success is defined on your own terms. If that means, hey, I want to be able to go and feel good for the next 15 years on the mats and recover well for that and be able to sustain it into my 40s, my 50s. I'm here again as a coach to help to guide you to find success faster. So it's a very personalized one-on-one coaching program where you and I work together individually on a day-to-day basis. We build your jiu-jitsu schedule to use the consolidated stress model, I like the term, that helps us to understand how we can manage stress based on your lifestyle demands. And then we build a strength and conditioning program based on the data that comes into us. So we do a baseline assessment online. We follow that up with wellness questionnaires, understanding how you approach your day-to-day and your energy levels, your stress. And then we're able to find and optimize a schedule that works for you. So I'm here with you every step of the way through your process, and we adapt and adjust as necessary. Whether you're a new father, like some of our members are, of less than a month, we're going to adapt. Whether you have a higher workload this week than last, we're always trying to stay as close to plan A as possible. So with the Durable Grappler, if you love jiu-jitsu, you want to be doing jiu-jitsu for as long as possible in your life, you want to make it work with your lifestyle demands, I'm here to coach you through that process and build that success out for you faster. You can find us at the Durable Grappler on Instagram, and the same thing on Facebook, the Durable Grappler. And yeah, we take on 5 new clients every month. The enrollment period is usually the final week of the month. And so 5 new members, you start on the first of the month, we get your baseline assessments going. And then through the app, we're just working together. I communicate and check in with you every day, help to hold you accountable and guide you to that, again, the success that you perceive.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And I think anyone that's listened to this, and if you're serious about jiu-jitsu, and just like you said, there's so many benefits, I would definitely recommend checking out Vince's program, learn a little bit more about it. And yeah, man, I'm so excited to just have you just in the jiu-jitsu community. And I think you just have so much knowledge that you can share with everyone. And that's just what it's about. It just really takes a whole community of, people being experts in different things to, bring us all up together. So yeah, man, thanks so much. I always love chatting with you, and I'd love to have you back on again. And I'm sure people will really get a lot out of this. I think people will really love this episode. So thanks a lot for the time, Vince, and I can't wait to see you on the mats and chat with you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. I really appreciate this.
Thanks a lot, brother. Have a good night.
All right. Take care, Josh.
Take care.